Welcome to this little mini lesson on WHMIS symbols and labels. In your house, you probably will never find one of these labels. They're more used on chemicals, concentrated chemicals that you might find in a place of business or that I have here in the science department. They're important to know for life because when you do find a job and you're working around chemicals, whether it's in my science office or working at McDonald's, you need to know these, and they do test you on them when you get your first job. There's always a module on WHMIS training that I have to do every 2 years, and you get trained on your job. And if you do high skills majors or things like that, you also get trained on it. Here, for the WHMIS labels, there are 6 areas that you need to be aware of. So I'm going to go through each one with you and just give a little talk. I just need you to copy down the headings, and you can write a little bit more if you want to. We're going to look at these for the next couple days. So the first thing here is the product identifier. So that's in the top line. So that's just the name of the product. It's usually a chemical name, but there's also different types of names they can use, like a common name and brand name. And we're going to spend a lesson just on naming things later on. So let's not worry about that right now. The second part are the pictograms. So you wrote that down by watching the first video in this lesson. Right, so they go in the next part here. You can see they're the exact same symbols you learned about in the lesson. And it could be anywhere from 1 to all 9 of them across there, depending on how dangerous the chemical is. You're going to look at an example today that has 4 of them. So you can see that they can be pretty bad. The third part here are the signal words. So that's this danger here. So it could be danger or warning. It's to draw your eye to that area, and so that when you read the words underneath it that go with the hazard statements, it tells you why the chemical is dangerous, right? So you can see here on this label, it's fatal if swallowed and causes skin irritation. So those are things to know when you're handling that chemical. The next part here are the precautionary statements. So it's telling you how to handle the chemical properly, how to be safe around it, how to clean it up afterwards. Right, so that's all this safety precaution stuff here in the middle. So you can read this one here about how to dispose of it, wearing gloves, always wash your hands, don't eat, drink, or smoke around it. Sometimes it gives first aid ideas if you do get injured. And that's this part down here, right? So there's the first aid section. So what to do. So that whole section there is the precautionary statements. So that's the biggest part and very important to read. The last part is the supplier identifier. So that's here on the bottom, right? That just tells you where the chemical came from. It's just the name of the company you bought it from. And it's there. So if there is a problem, you can contact them to get more information. So those are the 6 parts of the label. Make sure you know what they are, because I will ask you questions about them. And just be able to identify what they mean when you look at a WHMIS label. The second part to these is something called the safety data sheet. So this is a piece of paper that I get with the chemicals when I buy them for my office. And you can see that the sheet has 16 sections on it, right? You can see them all down here on the side. So all of these sections are always present, and they're good to read if it's the first time you're handling a chemical. So as a chemistry or science teacher, my background's not in chemistry, so I always read these before I use chemicals in my office, so I know what I'm handling and how to be safe. So again, you can see it tells you the hazards, right, which is also on the label. It tells you first aid measures, which are always important to me. It tells me how to handle it safely, so when I bring it to the classroom, I know that I'm being safe. It tells me, what else do I look on here? Some of how it's poisonous. So if I breathe it in, is it going to cause me trouble? If I touch my skin, is it going to cause me trouble? And then I always look for disposal, how to get rid of it. Because at the end of my demonstration or lab, I always have to get rid of my chemicals. So the other parts on here that I didn't highlight, right? The composition, I don't really need to know that if I was using it in a lab, but you would in maybe a career. Firefighting, accidental release, right? I'm not really looking for that because I know that I'm going to be safe handling it. And in my office, I don't have anything that's going to be super dangerous, so the accidental release doesn't really apply. Exposure limits, I'm not really worried about that as a teacher because if it's too dangerous, I just wouldn't leave it in my classroom or use it. The chemical and physical properties, you might remember this section here from your grade 9 experience, right? So those are just some of the words that you learned for physical and chemical properties. Just talks about what it looks like. Not really that important to me. And then how reactive it is, that's also good to know. But when I'm using it in a demonstration, I don't really read that one either. Ecological information, that doesn't really apply in a classroom because I dispose of it properly. Okay, so there are some areas on here that are important. Some of them not so important for what I do in my job, but it might be more important to you in your job when you start reading these labels. So I hope you enjoyed learning that with me. Stay tuned for the next video.